Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet. Today, 2005. This was an interesting period of time, both with my life and also with the Noble Ape development, because in early 2005 we returned to the US. We returned to the US in a somewhat fractured state. I've talked about this a little bit in prior Short Funk recordings, but the movement to the US and ultimately to Las Vegas just seemed crazy to me. It seemed like a process that just wasn't going to work out. I couldn't understand how I was going to get a job in Las Vegas. I couldn't understand what I was going to do. But the move to the US allowed me to have about 6 months while I was looking for work, but also 6 months to focus on Noble Ape in a way that I hadn't done really since the start of the development. Through this period of time, I created ApeScript. There were a few folk who were working on the Noble Ape simulation over this time. Mridul Pentapalli, I think, had just finished up most of his work. Mridul started working while I was in the UK, but continued to work when I was in the US. And Mridul actually came to the US to work over this period of time as well, although I've never met Mridul. And Pedro Ferreira also started developing on the Noble Ape simulation to create a Linux version of Noble Ape over this period of time too. What was particularly interesting as well, aside from ApeScript, was that I was looking at ways of further optimizing and condensing the Noble Ape simulation, and I created what was called a generic platform interface, which was ultimately a means of Linux, Windows, and Mac all running the simulation through a defined interface. I ported a lot of the software like Planet Noble Ape and some of the early character generation and just general visualization tools through the generic platform interface at this time. And it was also a period of time which really actually, honestly, I started developing this while I was in the UK, but refocused me on a program that I'd written called Noble Warfare, which was built on the ideas of the Noble Ape simulation, but in order to create a real-time strategy game. Through 2005 as well, the engineers who had originally championed the Noble Ape development at Apple were let go, and Apple moved over to the Intel architecture and did so without actually telling me. So my first time for understanding that this thing was actually out there was when a third-party developer contacted me and asked me a support question about this new Intel version of Noble Ape that apparently Apple had shown at WWDC that year. A few emails to Apple, found out what had gone on. I was terribly sad when Nathan and Sanjay left Apple. I mean, these were two guys that I'd worked with very closely, and I felt it was just really unfair and unfortunate that they'd been forced out of Apple because Apple was no longer using a particular architecture. What happened through this period of time as well was that a group of Intel engineers started developing with Noble Ape, and this was going to be a development run in parallel with Apple. Apple had its own interests associated with Noble Ape. But the Intel engineers started with the manager, and it was used as an introduction for folks to the team to start developing or pick some aspect of the Noble Ape simulation that they were going to develop. It was a very interesting time, and it was also a time where I got a job again, funnily enough. After 6 months of working on Noble Ape and ApeScript and applying furiously all over the place, I ended up working for Fujitsu in the Bay Area and also a company called Digital Theater Systems, which was based in Southern California in a place called Agora Hills, just outside of LA. And this was an interesting time because when you're unemployed for a period of time, you kind of get focused in what you're doing in that aspect. But to go back to, well, it wasn't even regular work, it was contracting work, but just having a salary once again was a huge relief. We had almost completely eroded all our savings. It was really a very dire situation in Las Vegas. And when I reflect on the dire situation when I had eroded all my savings in the US previously, there were certain flashback elements to it. It was very different, but I just thought you're constantly gambling in these circumstances, Tom. You're constantly just trying to work your way through this. But I did have an interesting aspect of software. I did have a new perspective on the Noble Ape simulation. That will lead us into the next section. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.